everyone, and welcome to Borderless Heritage, where cultures collide and connections thrive. Join Valeria from Nicaragua,
Maite from Mexico,
Che from Taiwan,
and Nilu from Iran. What was the point that we decided to make this podcast?
I think there's one night we were drinking and we were eating and we were chatting a lot about own culture and countries, and we found it's super interesting about exploring other people's history.
The thing that was really fascinating for me, the moment, was that I found similar things in between cultures. Like, we live in really different countries, but sometimes we have the same things. Like, I don't know, knocking on the wood. Do you have it as well?
Yeah, but for example, in my country, knocking in the wood is when you don't want something to happen.
I don't think we have that. Or I lost my heritage somehow.
Coming to heritage, we have to say that we study all World Heritage Studies together.
Yeah, we all come from different countries, from different fields, but somehow we met each other starting because apparently we share the same interest in heritage. And that night, it was also that feeling of we are from far places that are really far from each other. And then we saw the similarities, but then also how we handle one thing differently.
Yeah,
like we might have the same kind of fruit, but we don't eat it the same way.
Yeah.
It was avocado, right?
It was avocado, like avocado. For us that we are from Latin America, we don't think about avocado as something sweet, but it's something savory, something salty. And then we went to other places and we realized that people drink avocado juice.
What is your background? How you came to choose World Heritage as your master program?
For me, after working in a museum for almost 5 years, I decided that I need to move forward and study much in deeply this whole production of culture. Well, not only production, but the way we present or display our culture. And then I decided it's time for a master's.
Well, I'm also an architect, but in my case it was quite different because I never thought about studying heritage itself. But when there was a political crisis that started in my country in 2018, so it was basically to see how, because of the political situation that the country was having, there was no one talking about heritage itself. Of course, when you have so many social issues, that is the last topic in the list. But still, it was something that it was there, although people were not talking about it. But maybe we can say the intangible heritage is something that people were starting to say more, to think about it more, to voice it out more. So it was this idea of, okay, what can I do about my career? What can I do from my side? And this seems like a very interesting perspective to come here and to see what was I able to learn about it.
Yeah, oh well, I actually come from a conservation background. My bachelor, actually I study traditional building art conservation. It's kind of different than yours, Nilu. I think it's more about how we use. Oh, it's also because the material we use super differently than Europe. So actually, the things I got trained is how to use traditional technique to build back traditional buildings. I think that's fascinating maybe for you guys. But actually, there's not that much job opportunity in this field back home. So yeah, I choose to come and learn more about heritage, maybe also management, and also opening my own vision, not only staying back home, just focus on one little spot.
As you mentioned, I also studied conservation, conservation of historical buildings. But when you added the more definition, you use traditional materials to conserve the historical buildings, right? It's the same for us.
Really?
Yeah, like we study in some courses the history of conservation, which comes from Europe, specifically in Italy,
Okay.
right? But when we go further, more we go through our traditional material like clay. We used to use like clay and soil mostly, but in some areas we also have stones, but mostly
And it's like
Or-
to make it harder.
Yeah.
Things, right?
yeah, exactly. We have the both, what we call it in English, like خشت و آجر. Yeah,
Does it
it's
change
Adobe.
by region, like Adobe?
like maybe through the like history when they got like better in technical things, they started to bake the the clay to have like a stronger material.
Oh, okay, it's also like fascinating to see how all these traditional ways of building evolves with the technology.
Yeah.
Like people is making their life easier, but they're like, is this unbalance between having it easier and more accessible to everyone, but also losing the traditional ways of doing it.
Yeah, that's kind of sad, right?
Yeah.
But what is the main material in your architecture, like traditional architectures in your countries? Adobe?
But it is like this. No, we also had like if we go to vernacular, like let's say prior to colonization, are these mud blocks that were basically do it with mud and I don't know, grass and rocks, and they basically made the shape of the blocks, let it dry in the sun, and then they use it like also with some natural way of I don't know, like a mortar to paste them basically and to start making the structure. But those are also traditional ways that have been very lost because, of course, like mass production of houses with concrete, with iron is easier and more accessible for people than taking, I don't know, 1 year to build a small room because you're doing it in the traditional way.
Yeah.
So it's also that thing that you lose that traditionality because of easiness or easy access.
I think at least in my region the material is cut stone and it's quite heavy and quite thick, but it's also meant to be done in this way to protect from the weather. It's a situation that you want to keep yourself cool because it's very hot
Okay.
during the summer.
Yeah.
It's
And
more
during
related
winter?
and during the winter, it can reach a very down zero, but not as cold as here. We haven't mentioned where we are.
Yeah.
Here in Germany, we are freezing ourselves.
Even in summer?
Even in summer?
Yeah.
I think at this point we've been here for like 3 semesters minimum
Yeah.
in our heritage master, and so we already experienced what is a German winter.
Yeah.
And this year we didn't experience spring because it was super cold. Like at least 2 of us come from very humid countries.
Yeah.
Like both Taiwan and Nicaragua are very humid. At least Nicaragua is humid and hot.
This season, yes. Like back home, like in Taiwan also, like I think now it's like 33 degree. Now it's end of May.
Which season would it be right now?
It's supposed to be the end of spring, the beginning of summer, I think. Yeah, it's supposed to. I mean, I'm not sure it's going to get warmer or hotter. Yeah, but yeah, the weather is like getting really hot for now. But we're hoping there's some like typhoons coming because of like we really need the rains.
Most countries they're facing this problem because we also have lots of problems in like water issues and rains and
Yeah, so the bodies of water are not being completely full because there is no rain. So there are a lot of
Exactly.
droughts, and then people have no access to tap water.
exactly.
Simple as
Yeah, but you don't have this issue.
We do, for example, in Nicaragua right now is climate change.
Yeah.
So we
exactly.
have like hotter summers. Sometimes because we have a lot of hurricanes. Maybe we have more hurricanes during winter, but maybe there are some dry winters. So right now it's been a year by year case. So we cannot see how is climate change affecting Mexico.
This in my area, I can say that last year there was a problem with drought very strong, and some of the like we are divided by states. Some of the states were having like a more struggle than others because the country is huge. So sometimes what happens in the north, it doesn't happen in the south, for example, because it changed in the landscape a lot. So at least we are lucky that we can help each other, kind of. Kind of, I will say. I don't want to get too political with this, but not everyone help, you know.
You know who you are. So after being here or been studying this master for 3 semesters at least, do you feel like your perspective about heritage has changed? Because at least in my case, I feel like I knew what was heritage. I knew that it was important. But I learned that there are reasons behind, whether they're political, whether they are local, whether they are because we want to conserve our culture or we want to make a point. So now I'm questioning, after this time studying here, like the reasons why we conserve. So do you feel like your perspectives have changed?
For me, I'm not going to say got changed. I will say I opened my version of this because before I actually just focus with techniques things. We do a lot of things with wood, with somehow with clay and other weird with bowls, really weird materials, and focus with how to paint traditional paintings. But yeah, as you said, the reason why we're doing this, we don't. I know some, but we do study some, but we didn't focus with this part.
Well, after the studies, I will say that I got a more complete overview of how the heritage process is in general, how it affects the economy, for example, how it's involved with the politics, how it's a machinery much more complex than I imagine. You might think, or at least I might think before, that it was something just produced by the people who live in the locality, and then you see no, we are all somehow interconnected. And at least in Mexico, I could say that it might have much more opportunity in some areas that might have been for a long time ignored, or not ignored per se, but maybe not well showcased. There is a difference in cultures that they are not well famous, but they are part of the country diversity and richness. And I could see it now better after the studies. Yeah, before I only think about the history. I only focus on what is the past, but not also what is going on now. How is now connected with our present, for example.
By the way, I just want to add something. It's not only studying here, but just going around Europe. And also last semester, 2 semesters before, we went to Egypt. It's a really rich heritage country. Just looking at them, I learned how people use heritage all over different places. I think that's pretty important for me, for actually the heritage film back home.
I agree. Also, traveling, once you have this knowledge, it also makes you look things differently. So it's you start to see outside your bubble, or how people deal in your culture. But then you realize, okay, I'm in a completely different culture, and they have the reasons why they are living with their heritage this way.
Actually, I think that was the thing that happened to me. I really faced the big effect on me, on my mindset to face into different cultures, mostly intercultural studies. When I find out that in different countries, even in Europe, people are struggling about the same things, discourses, that I used to think that it's just about us. In my country, we had these problems or these discussions or whatsoever. Once I met 2 students, one a German architecture background and another German with urban design studies. and we were talking about different things, and suddenly they told me that why you wanna conserve these old buildings, what kind of usage they're gonna have, people actually can use them. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that this discussion also exists in like Germany, because we have lots of debate, and when like the municipalities wanna like destroy some historical parts, conservators and researchers, heritage researchers comes and they're like, no, you can't, this is the value, these places have value, and etc. And I used to think that this is us, that we still struggling with this mindset. It's not like in Germany, like conservators, they have their voices, like in comparison in my countries, that they're not that strong enough to maybe to stand for their opinions. Like you have to fight really. But the fact that people all over the world think the same, they have the same perspectives or questioning different things like the same way, it was really, really interesting for me.
Yeah, what is the discourse behind? And also, like, some of the objects that they took to these global north countries, they were taken in a time where it was normal.
Yeah.
When it was part of the conquer process, when it was part of how you invade a country, when you're in a war with a country, you just take things back home. Or like these things that they found or they discovered, big quotation marks. and then we have nowadays all these fights about the provenance of them. It's like, it belongs to my country, it belongs to my culture, but sometimes it's this idea of the museum or the institution or the shared heritage or the global heritage, like why we don't have the right to also present it to the world. And then there are these communities, these places when they're like, okay, but this has a different meaning for me. This is not just an object with artistic value. So how can you take this if this means something else for me? And is that like who has the saying for those things at the end?
As I found, it's an international problem that all countries, like none of these countries, neither Iran or Nicaragua or Mexico or Taiwan or other countries, they don't have the ability to have their artifacts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe
Like-
sometimes the conditions in the country are not the best ones to actually
exactly.
start making those demands.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's those moments when it gets complicated or tricky
Exactly.
what you do then with those objects when they give you back. But there's also like this idea of it doesn't matter what I do with my objects because they are mine. You go to certain museums and some 80% of the actual collection is in a basement.
Yeah.
It's not even presented to the public and they don't want to give them back. So it's like, what are you doing with those objects?
Also a really interesting topic because the biggest museum back home in Taiwan, actually I don't know if you know the Old Palace Museum in Taipei. Anyway, because in Beijing they have another one, but we're like totally different. All our objects is from China, like 60 years ago when our government like moved like everything from China like to Taiwan because they lost the Civil War. So they have like big boats with this all objects and they move to Taiwan. And now they said all the objects, if they the exhibition will change every 3 months, so they will change the objects. If you want to finish watching watching the objects, you need to spend 60 years. Like you can see how much we actually like bring all these objects from China. There's good things and bad things because all this object is from the old King Palace. And during like I think like how long ago, like their time period, like Chinese is like crazy destroying everything about like the higher, like the royal family, connect with them because they don't have royal family that time. Everything connect with like a high level. They're like destroying everything. So like even sometimes everyone says like the thing you're saying, like because this object they like people bring them away from China, so they survive.
good.
Chinese is asking like museums like, of course there's some like wrong ways in history when they went to like the United States or Germany or British Museum, whatever. But now they're asking them to return it. I'm not sure like really asking because I'm not really focused with this kind of topic. But like if they really stay in China, we really know that everything will be destroyed and you won't see that anymore.
Yeah.
Because like for your topics, like it might, right? Like it might, but we know in China it's like totally destroyed.
They don't want to tell the story behind those objects, so for them it's better to destroy it.
Not like that. It's like everyone is equal, so
Okay.
no one should have this kind of thing. I think that's the main idea.
Yeah.
Like
I
because
see.
usually like it's like nobles, royal family will collect all this. Like who is rich? So no one should be rich. No one should be noble. Everyone should be
Same level.
yes.
Okay.
Pergamon Museum, I guess they returned to artifacts of Benin.
Oh,
that's
that's
a
the
Humble
Humble
Forum.
Forum.
That's a
Humble
forum.
Forum, yeah. Humble Forum. They returned to object of Benin, like
The Benin bronzes.
Bronzes, yeah. So we were talking that like they had scanned the object carefully and by detail, and they gave it back. And we were talking that we're living in an era that having the information is the power. So it's not really important to have the object, but it's important to have the information. So if you have the really detailed scan with techniques and everything, no matter if you gave it like back to the roots.
Yeah, and as far as I know, with that Benin Bronzes collection, it's like they have 170 in the Humble Forum, and they gave back just 2.
Yeah.
And the exhibition itself, they're like 10, which means
Wow.
that they are archived, they are in a basement, they are probably not even exposed to the public. So it's like, what is this? It feels like a power, although, okay, they say that it's because they're reconciliating with their colonial past, so this is a gesture that they're making.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
only 2 pieces from an entire big collection. What about in the museum that you work, Maite? Was it all the objects from Mexico, or do you have like these loans from other places?
No, it was about the life of an entrepreneur
Okay.
in the area of Monterrey, and it has loans from other entrepreneurs. So it was telling the same story from the same community and people. So it doesn't have this kind of interconnection with other places really. But yeah, yesterday I was in the Humboldt Forum exactly. Now that I remember, and the interesting point that they were putting in their exhibition is that they don't only put the objects, but they have these collaborations with artists
Okay.
to tell stories from the objects. And I think that's much more rich than just having the objects, because the objects can tell us a lot, but what is the connection with the communities that belong to?
Exactly.
That could be the gain for the Humboldt Forum really, that hold the objects itself.
Yeah, that's really, really a good way of presenting, because when you go to a museum and you just see like thousands of objects in a meaningless context, you're like, so what?
Yeah, and then you're overwhelmed. You have no information, just a
Exactly.
small description, and you have no story.
Exactly.
So it's just like any object.
you can't relate to it. You're
That's
just
what happened with me when I went to British Museum. There's too much things. We spent 6 hours.
The
walking
crime
inside.
scene.
Yeah.
yeah.
We spent 6 hours without like audio guides, like just walking in. I haven't finished it yet. I didn't like even have time to read like all the information.
You have to run.
I have to go all through like every like the exhibition rooms.
I think we went through lots of deep discussions.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be just an introduction,
Yeah, but
right?
but this is like a small glimpse of
Yeah,
all the
exactly.
topics we're planning to touch.
Yeah.
Like
It's like the
how we get together because we all love this kind of topics, right?
Exactly.
yeah, yes, this is like the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. we're going to talk about many different things.
Not only about heritage buildings or artifacts or
Yeah.
Cultures, personal experiences.
food, languages.
So, as we wrap this episode of Borderless Heritage, we would like to thank you for joining us on this journey.
Let's continue to break down boundaries, challenge stereotypes, and promote cultural interactions.
Your encouragement encourage our Persians to continue share narrative that promotes unity and solidarity.
From all of us at Borderless Heritage, thank you. Goodbye, and we'll be back in the next episode.